The first rule of investing is simple. Don't lose money. The second rule? Never forget the first. That's all there is to it. Those words belong to a man whose name has become synonymous with patience, precision, and profit, Warren Buffett. A man who built a fortune worth over $100 billion, not by inventing the next great technology or inheriting a dynasty, but by mastering the rhythm of the stock market when others stumbled. But to understand how he did it, how a shy boy from Omaha became the Oracle, we have to go back to the very beginning. The year is 1930. The Great Depression has just sunk its claws into America. Families are losing homes, businesses, and hope. In the middle of that turmoil, a baby boy named Warren Edward Buffett is born in Omaha, Nebraska. His father, Howard, a stockbroker, and his mother, Layla, struggle to keep the family afloat after Howard loses his job. Yet somehow from the ashes of the country's worst financial collapse, Warren's fascination with money is born. He's quiet, shy, the kind of boy who spends hours alone reading in his father's study, surrounded by books about markets, numbers, and business. By the age of 6, he already wants to make money, not to spend it, but to understand it. He convinces his grandfather, who owns a small grocery store, to sell him Coca-Cola so he can go door-to-door peddling bottles around the neighborhood. He makes a tiny profit, 5 cents for every 6-pack, but that's enough to ignite something powerful. Soon, he's selling magazines, chewing gum, and soda. At 11, he makes his first real investment, 3 shares of a company called Cities Service at $38.25 each. Then, the stock drops to $27. Warren panics. The fear every investor knows too well. Creeps in, but he holds on. When the price climbs to $40, he sells, making a small profit. A few months later, that same stock soars past $200. The lesson hits hard. Patience pays. Years later, Warren would look back and say, 75 years have gone by, and I've never known what the market will do tomorrow. That's not my game. My game is owning good companies for a long time. By the time Warren turns 14, his father has been elected to Congress, and the family moves to Washington, D.C. There, he takes his first real job, delivering newspapers for the Washington Post. But delivering one paper isn't enough. Soon, he's delivering for 2, the Times-Herald and the Washington Post. At the same time, earning $179 a month, the equivalent of over $3,000 today. He doesn't stop there. Using his savings, he buys a used pinball machine with a friend and installs it in a barber shop. Within months, they own 3 machines, collecting coins from customers who play while waiting for a haircut. When they finally sell the business, Warren pockets $1,200. Then with that money, at just 15 years old, he buys his first property, a 40-acre farm in Nebraska. A teenager, owning land. While most kids his age were spending lunch money, Warren Buffett was building an empire one small deal at a time. After high school, Warren wants to skip college and dive straight into business. But his father insists, so he enrolls at the University of Pennsylvania, later transferring to the University of Nebraska. By the time he graduates, he's already saved enough money to pay his way through school, funded by the rent from his farmland. Then comes rejection. Harvard Business School says no, but fate has its own plan. Buffett applies to Columbia Business School, where he meets the man who would change his life, Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing. Graham's philosophy is simple: buy stocks when they're undervalued and sell them when the market realizes their true worth. It's logical, mathematical, and disciplined. Everything Buffett loves. Graham's book, The Intelligent Investor, becomes Buffett's Bible, shaping the foundation of how he'll one day conquer Wall Street. After earning his master's degree, Buffett dreams of working on Wall Street. But there's a problem. He's painfully shy. The thought of public speaking terrifies him. He even throws up before presentations. To fix this, he enrolls in a Dale Carnegie course, and it changes everything. He learns how to talk, how to lead, how to inspire. Years later, Buffett would call it the best investment he ever made, not in stocks, but in himself. In time, his mentor, Benjamin Graham, offers him a job at his investment firm in New York. There, Buffett hones his craft, learning to read financial statements, balance sheets, and spot value where others see chaos. But something still bothers him. Graham focuses only on numbers. Buffett, on the other hand, wants to understand people, the leadership behind the numbers, the story behind the stock. Their philosophies start to diverge, and when Graham retires, Buffett takes what he's learned and returns home to Omaha. It's 1956. Warren is 25 years old. He saved nearly $175,000, a fortune in those days, and decides to start his own investment partnership, Buffett Associates Limited. Instead of an office, he uses a spare bedroom in his home. His partners, friends and family, who collectively invest $105,000. Following Graham's philosophy, Buffett begins buying undervalued companies, cigar butts, as he calls them, businesses that have one good puff left, enough to make a little money before they fade away. The idea works brilliantly. Over 6 years, his partnership grows from $105,000 to $7.2 million. By his mid-30s, Buffett is managing over $100 million in assets. But something unsettling happens. The market is overheating. Prices are climbing beyond reason. The cigar butts are harder to find, and that old lesson returns. Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. In 1969, he dissolves his partnership and steps away from the stock market. But fate, once again, has other plans. A few years earlier, Buffett had invested in a failing textile company called Berkshire Hathaway. Its stock was trading at $7.50 a share, though its assets were worth much more. When the company's owner tried to cheat him in a sale, Buffett retaliated by buying the entire business. It was supposed to be a short-term play, but instead of selling, Buffett transformed Berkshire Hathaway into a holding company, a vehicle for buying other businesses. With the help of Charlie Munger, his trusted partner, and opposite in every way, Buffett evolved from Graham's strict numbers-driven model to a new philosophy. It's better to buy a great company at a fair price than a fair company at a great price. Together they began acquiring businesses with what Buffett called an economic moat. Companies so strong that competition couldn't touch them. Coca-Cola, American Express, the Washington Post. But it was insurance that changed everything. Unlike other industries, insurance companies collect cash up front, premiums, and only pay out later. That money in between, known as the float, can be invested. Buffett realized that if he bought insurance companies and invested their float wisely, he could build wealth faster than almost anyone else. So, he bought National Indemnity, Central States Indemnity, and eventually Geico. With their capital, Berkshire Hathaway began accumulating shares of the world's strongest brands. By the 1980s, Buffett was a millionaire many times over. By the 1990s, a billionaire. By 2008, he was the richest man in the world. But perhaps what makes Warren Buffett truly remarkable isn't his wealth. It's his humility. He still lives in the same Omaha house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He drives himself to work in a Cadillac. He eats McDonald's for breakfast. He's given away most of his fortune to charity, calling it a moral obligation to give back. His empire, Berkshire Hathaway, has become one of the most valuable companies on earth, built not on luck or hype, but on discipline, patience, and trust in the long game. Because in his words, and perhaps the truest investment rule of all, if you buy things for far below what they're worth, and you buy enough of them, you basically don't lose money.